All right, so now we're going to take a look at creating practice revenue projections. So here you are, nurse practitioner. How much money are you going to produce for a practice? Whether it's your own practice or whether it's for somebody else, you need to have a sense about what is it you can generate. So to do that, we're going to look at three objectives. One, we're going to look at understanding how do you determine what your volume of patients are going to be seeing, what kind of patients you're going to see, who you're going to see, and how do you come up with that so that you even have a sense of what your capacity could be. Then we want to look at when you come up with that, have you overreached? Can you validate it? Does it look right to your peers? You don't go ask your friend, but you actually look at published data. We're going to take a look at that. And then I want to back dollars and cents against each of those encounters or visits so you can see where the dollars and cents are going to fall. So those are kind of our three objectives we're going to take a look at. So let's look at some basic assumptions. We're going to start with outpatient, but I know I have some NICU NICU providers in the room, so I'm going to go over inpatient too, but let's focus on outpatient. Think of your own doctor's office type perspective as well. I have one FTE nurse practitioner, that's you. You're seeing patients 40 hours a week, clinical time, patient care time. Specialty, obviously with your lunch break, 1 hour for lunch. I'm going to see patients from 8 to 5 with my 1 hour lunch break. That's where I get 8 hours. And during that time slots, Monday through Friday, I'm going to see patients every 20 minutes. I'm not a fan of the 15, 30, 45, 60 minutes at all. You need 20 minutes to truly evaluate a patient, do a full comprehensive history, do an exam, spend time doing care coordination and counseling. And 20 minutes is a good allotment time for an established patient. New patients, I like to account 40 minutes, and preventive exams, 60 minutes. Physicians don't necessarily like that model, but as you walk through this, you're going to see this model can work just fine in generating revenue with the right payer mix. Then we're going to take a look at if I have 24 time slots a day, which is my three slots per hour, because 20 to 60 is 3, times my 8 hours of patient care, because I have 9-hour workday, but I take an hour for lunch, equals 24 time slots in a day that I can see patients, okay? So I multiply that by 5 days a week, I'm going to come up with 120 slots per week. Now remember, these are 20-minute slots. If I calculate a 48 calendar year, not a 52, because I got to account for your vacation and holidays and time off, and the office is closed due to weather and all these other reasons. So let's just pull a whole month off the calendar books and look at a 48-week calendar year. So 120 slots a week times 48 weeks is 5,760 slots per year. So based on those assumptions, there's no Saturdays, no Sundays, no evenings. Just this is the assumptions we're looking at. I've got 5,760 slots per year. So who's going to fill them? So let's take our new patients. Let's say 20% of these people this year are going to be new, because that's what that's where my marketing dollars are going to be spent, and I'm going to go after new patients. Or historically, that's what our new patients have been. So I'm going to say new patients 40 minutes. I'm going to take 20% of those time slots and make them new, which means I've got 1,152 of my 5,760 sucked up in new patients, which equals actually 576 patients. I'm also going to make the assumption that every new patient I see is going to at least come back for a visit. So each new patient will have a follow-up visit. Follow-up visit's 20 minutes. So that's 576 patients are going to come back, which means I have 576 slots that were used, because 20-minute slot is what we've defined this as. Then I'm going to look at an established patient and say, I saw him last year. I saw him the year prior. I'm going to say 55% of these time slots are going to be made up by people this year that I saw in the last couple years. Remember, a new patient can't consider someone a new patient unless you haven't seen them for 3 years. So if I saw him last year, year before, those are still established patients to the practice. So 55% of my time slots are going to be for those people. So I'm going to have 3,168 slots used, which a 20-minute slot means I'm going to have 3,168 people come in that I saw in prior years that aren't new to me this year. Then for preventive care, I'm going to say 25% of my slots are going to be used to take care of to do physicals and preventive care, and we're going to make those 60 minutes. Now I can get more in depth and say, well, I'm going to do sport physicals, and those only take up, I can do 2 sport physicals, because sport physicals are 10 minutes, so I can do 2 and 20, and you can get really in depth, but let's not go there. Let's just focus on simple time slots. So I've got all 5,700 time slots allocated here, and I've also got my unique patient count. Perfect. So now we know what our volumes are. Now remember, when I'm going to see 576 new patients, and I'm going to see 3,600, 3,700 some established patients, they're going to fall into our bell curve. Remember back in our practice module, I talked about the opportunity in advanced practice nursing that these are the bell curves of how nurse practitioners tend to fall in a trending of level of service. So out of my 576 new patients, they're going to trend against this exact bell curve. So that means the percentage here is going to be applied, this percentage, that percentage, that percentage, that percentage. So I have this exact same new patient bell curve. I'm also going to take my 3,168 plus 576, and I'm going to trend them against this bell curve. And that's what my services will be, because that's what nurse practitioners trend at. So that's why I'm using that as a basis or foundation, like we talked about in the practice models module. So what happens? Well, here's my allocation of new. 201 to 205 is my new patients. So 2%, 22, 40, 27. Those numbers actually make up this chart, this grid. Then I'm going to take the allocation on my established patients right here as 3.2%, 10, 50, 33, 3%. Again, how did I get that allocation? That allocation is how this spreads across. So once I take these allocations, and I know I have 576 new patients, I take 576, multiply it by 2.5%, I get 15. 576 times that, 129. Do that all the way down. Then I'm going to take the 3744, which is the combination of those two numbers. Right here, my 3168 and 576, both established patients. Those become my 3744, and I'm going to multiply that by 3.2% for 121. 3744 times 10% for 375, and so on. Now, I've also had a lot of fun and plugged in, remember that good old work RVU? Remember, one patient doesn't equal, you see a patient, I see a patient, we're not equal. Because if my patient was a new patient, I get 1.45 value. If your new patient level 3 was an established patient, you get a 0.99 value. You don't even get 1. Where I got a 1.45. So you and I both saw one patient, but look at the value. I worked more. I got more work effort, more product, more money. Because mine's worth 1.45, yours is only worth 0.99. Okay? So when you look at that, those are the RVUs. Multiply 15 by the 0.49, I come to 7.28. And so if I'm the nurse practitioner and I'm seeing all these patients, I'm going to generate 5,251 work RVUs doing this. That's pretty cool. What's that mean? We're going to talk about that. Is that good? Is that bad? Is that low? You don't know. Is 4,320 patients make sense? Is that what I should see? Is that what everyone else is seeing? Well, we're coming up with assumptions and then we'll validate them. Okay? So on the next slide, we're going to go through our preventive services, because remember back here, I said preventive care, we're going to see 60 minutes, and we're going to take 25% of our time slots to be preventive care, and I have 288 people that are going to be seen for preventive care. Now, those could be established patients coming back in for preventive care. Those could be new patients that came in for a problem-focused visit who then determined that I'm going to come back for preventive care. Either way, I'm going to make these established preventive care patients. So what that does is, here's my preventive care initials. Remember, I made them all established, because if I'm a man and I call a doctor's office and say I haven't been seen by a physician for 2 years and I just think it's time to come in for a physical, first question my scheduler is going to ask is, what made you pick up and call us today? Well, my shoulder's been bothering me and I've been fatigued and I just don't know, but I need to come in for a physical. No, you're not coming in for a physical. You're coming in as a new patient problem-focused visit. I'm going to capture that revenue. Then I'll bring you back, or maybe during the same visit, if I'm allowed, do a preventive physical to cover the preventive aspects, but we're not just going to bring you in as new preventive because I want to capture the new problem focus, because you're complaining about, there's a reason a guy picked up the phone and called the doctor. In stereotype, if you will. So all mine are going to be new. Well, there's no allocation really. You got to kind of base this on your practice. So I'm going to be in an adult practice, because remember my specialty was adult family. So I'll grab a couple 5 and 11-year-olds. About 5% of my preventives will be that. 5% will be the 12 to 17, because these CPT codes are broken out by age. 40-40 on the 18 to 64, and we'll say 10% will have a welcome to Medicare or a visit after being 65. So that totals 100, and that's how I'm going to allocate them out. So multiply that by my 288 patients. Now, if I'm more pediatric, obviously dump the 40 and 10% here and move those up here into the 1 to 4s, but you get the idea. RVUs are applied. Apply the RVUs. I got 537.27 RVUs right here. So my problem-focused visits are going to have a total work RVU of 5251.12. When I look at my preventive physicals, I'm going to have 537.27. Obviously, when I add them together, that gives me my total work RVU. Now, what would increase my work RVUs? Well, all we're talking about here is office visits. That's kind of boring. Actually, kind of straightforward, too. But what about if I did smoking cessation? What about if I did a skin tag removal? What if I burned off a wart? All those things add up. So if you come back to my example here where I saw a new patient and I had 1.45, and I go, hey, check me out. I'm like making more than you at 0.99. Well, if your 0.99 established patient then had a skin tag removal for whatever that's worth, smoking cessation at 0.25 RVU add-on, then you had a wart removed, which is another add-on, all of a sudden, we both saw one patient. Yours was new level 3 at 1.45. Mine was established level 3, but because I did so much, my number's 0.99 plus this, plus that, plus this, plus that, which can come up to like a 2.9. So now all of a sudden, I saw more instead of you at 1.45. So you can see how the comparisons work and how you can increase your RVUs, which then totally will increase your numbers and your productivity. That's why when you look at productivity or performance and incentives, nobody builds it off of like how many patients did you see. It's all based off of work RVU, which always ties back to the grand dollar. All right, so here we go. I'm looking at some statistics here for family medicine of all ownership, which means whether it's hospital owned, independent owned, solo practice, group practice, all ownerships. I'm looking at a per FTE physician, because remember on the first slide I said we're going to do one nurse practitioner, 1.0. We're going to see patients 40 hours a week, clinical care, no teaching, no academic. It's all patient care, minus your lunch. So my physician work RVUs should equal about 5,572. Or my mean 6,000. If I want to be in the 75th percentile, should be 7,000. So you know what? We came up with 5,000 and some. So down here we're 5,788. I took the 552.51 plus the 537 equals 5788. 5788 is between the median and the 75th percentile. I'm feeling pretty good that that's reasonable. I'm also going to come back and look at this when I look at my gross charges and medical revenue here in a little bit, but here's some national statistical data that's pulled in from recognized organizations, not your neighbor, not your friend, going, how many do you see and what do you happen to do, but truly stuff you could benchmark against and bring back to an employer and say, hey, I'm at 8,900 work RVUs, and by the way, did you know that's the 90th percentile of where everybody else is performing in the same similar specialty? Because this changes by specialty. I can make this internal medicine, I can make this cardiology, I can make it psychiatry, I can change this degree and come up with all new numbers. So this is how you kind of look at work RVU. All right, so remember this slide. This slide was the one that said, where's my contract? So if you go back to the healthcare dollar module, we went through who holds the contract, what drives what your allowable rate's going to be. Because now I know how many visits I have, I know what my preventive services are, I know what my problem-focused visits are. Now I need to know when I multiply the 579 new patient visits broke across those 5 codes, what am I multiplying it by? What do I get paid? That's what the network is going to tell you, is when you hold your contract, you want to know what's the allowable rate. That's where the contract is. That's where the reimbursement rate is defined. Okay. Remember, they don't pay the claims. You send the claims here. They fund them. This is the mother may I. Those don't impact when you're building a pro forma. You want to know what your contract reimbursement rates are. That's what's important. Then when we looked at the contracts, if you remember this slide from the healthcare module, we said who are the employer groups of these networks. Because remember, we hold a contract with a network, so we want to know who the employer groups are. So in this scenario, if you remember this slide, again from the healthcare dollar module, we had said, gosh, if I was an employer, or excuse me, if I was a provider, I really want to see Bass Pro Shops, because look how much more money they pay over Medicare. Grandma here at Medicare in this example is $94.45 for my new office visit. Here they're paying me $129. Now we all know this is over 5 codes, 5 codes. You saw the array of new codes. but they pay me $94, they pay me $129, so wow, that's much higher. I wish I'd seen more Bass Pro Shops, as long as they don't have a high deductible. Then I see my established office visit, $60 versus $83. So as we move forward in the scenario, I'm going to pull in what the Medicare rates are in New Jersey, right where you are. But no, I'm also, when I bring these numbers in, looking at very conservative numbers, not necessarily totally conservative, because you see Medicaid's below us. You see there are employer groups paying you less than Medicare allowable rates. So you know that there is a chance that if your payer mix is all Medicaid, you're going to make less than what I'm getting ready to project. But we also know that if my business is skewed and I do target marketing, remember that topic, target marketing, I can maybe get more of this business, which then will increase the number of revenue I get. Because again, when I start multiplying 576, 374.4 against, reverse. When I start multiplying those numbers against 129, I'm going to get a bigger number than when I do it against 94.45. So let's do that. I pulled in Medicare. Remember, grandma. Okay, that's where we're hanging out. Right here at grandma. We know people pay us more. We know people pay us less. We're just going to try to get a benchmark. Where are we sitting? Medicare is a given because Medicare is published. We know the numbers. We don't have to do a lot of research. Here's all my new patient frequencies. And if I was a doctor, I'd get paid $47.95. And because Medicare has this great, nurse practitioners get paid less than doctors, except for incident 2 and shared visits and all the opportunities where we as nurse practitioners can get equal pay to the doctor. Let's just assume we don't meet any of those special billing rules that help us even boost our revenue more. And we're going to go with the good old, we're just going to take the 85% of Medicare reimbursement because that's Medicare's rule and we're only talking about Medicare, as dumb as it is. So I'm going to multiply 15 by $40.76, and I'm going to generate $603.23. I'm going to do that for every one of my new patients and my established patients. Then I'm going to come down, and that totals $348,000. Hey, that's not a bad revenue number for us, is it? Considering the nurse practitioner salary of about $100,000, that's almost 3 times my salary. Who doesn't want to hire somebody who makes 3 times their salary? Again, we are looking at the fact that you don't have no-shows, all our time slots are filled, other variables, but hey, that's not a bad deal. The doctor makes $410,000 because remember, this is a Medicare rule. Now, if this was multi-plan and I booked this up against 100% of like a PPO network that pays nurse practitioners equal to that of a physician, which we have many that do, then that 348, just by the fact that your contract is better, not that you have more patients you saw, but your contract is better, you can be at that 410. Down here, I bring my preventive visits in. I'm going to pull in another 32,000 doing those. And I'm looking here going, wait, I like new patients. I can see established patients. But if I do established preventive, look how nice those numbers are compared to those numbers. You can start seeing that, preventive physicals sometimes are better than preventive problem-focused people. Add the numbers together, I get 448 to 381. Now again, I'm multiplying this volume of business. So this means my practice payer mix is 100% Medicare. Nobody has a practice that's 100% Medicare. Now, if you go back, not forward. If you go back, remember, when I start putting bigger numbers in, I'm not doing any more work. No more work. Same number of time slots, same number of people. But when you multiply it by a better allowable rate, you're going to get more money. That's how this happens, okay? So you look at that and you say, all right, that's not too bad. So let's take into some considerations. We want to look at the charge analysis just to benchmark us. Remember, I like our charges to sit at 75th percentile. This comes from our Charge Master module. So while there's all the analysis and how we come up with the charges, one of the things I really look at is I like to sit around the 75th percentile. So for fun, I came and I plugged in the 75th percentile for every one of these CPT codes in the Newark and New Jersey area because it's the data I have access to. And you will see, here's your charges. Your charges now will be $812,000. Remember, in the charge analysis module, you don't get paid. So I'm going to get $381,000 when I'm going to charge $879,000, which gives me a gross collection rate of about 40-some%. Okay, charge per encounter is 203 here just for fun because that is another benchmark that we look at. So here you can see I'm going to have $879,000 in charges and I'm only expecting that other number. So if you go to our performance indicator module, what did I call our performance indicators? I said we should be between a 40 and 60% gross collection rate. See how all these modules now are kind of coming together when you start putting the numbers and dollars and cents together? So at a 40 to 60% gross collection rate, I'm sitting at 43.35%. You know what? My charge volume against my collection volume draws me at 43.35%. My work RVUs, when I compare it to the national work RVUs, give me good numbers as well. So I know that's in a good sense. Then I'm going to come in and I'm going to look at my physician work RVUs are sitting at this X. My gross charges are sitting right here at this X. And my median medical revenue is sitting at this X. Now, why am I not higher with closer to the other X's? Because I had to knock myself down 15% because I'm a nurse practitioner, which just goes to show you, argue and fight at contract negotiations, remember the contracting module, to get paid the same rate as the doctor because you're doing the same stuff. Okay? So as you can see here, these are all the considerations. I'm landing on this chart, so that makes me feel really good about where we are. Okay, now we did talk about add-on services. How can I increase my charges or maybe even bump up my percentiles? Because again, I'm looking at this number of RVUs means every patient comes in every 20 minutes, 5 days a week, 48 weeks a year. We all know that isn't the case. So when this X actually starts dropping down to over to this side, and I better not click, starts falling to this side, how do I boost my RVUs back up? Well, I start making sure I do procedures, and I do my CLIA wave lab testing, and I do smoking cessation, and I do transitional care and chronic care management, Medicaid, start giving fluoride varnishing. So you can do fluoride varnishing, it's paid for. Welcome to Medicare visits. Things to move my lower volume of individual patients coming in, do more on them to keep your X higher up on the curve. And again, this is family medicine we're looking at. So that's how, and then how do I get this revenue up there? Everybody would be saying Bass Pro Shops, at least in this example, because to get that X back up there, there's a couple things I need to do, and those couple things are, a couple things that we need to do are either get our compensation per unit more closer to what a physician would be paid, which would also include changing your payer mix to more self-funded employer groups where the networks that you're contracting with are paying you at 100% of the physician rate, 100% of the physician rate, 100% of the physician rate. So that when you see Stewart Printing and you see Rowan University and you see Tetra Technologies, you're going to get the same rate as the physician, but you're not doing anything bigger and better except a better allowable rate. So those are two of the things that really can impact your revenues, is pulling those in. Okay. So we did that, we showed that. Okay, so we're on target, but that's how I can move this revenue trigger up here closer. Not see more patients. You're at capacity. That's what we did here. Okay, so next question we're going to take a look at is, okay, so now I have my numbers, and my numbers were the $400 and some thousand in revenue. So let's take a look. Our projected I brought it in here. Our projected revenue on office visits only at the same assumptions reviewed with what's above, we came up that we're going to do $381,262. And again, let's go back and look at where that came from, just because I don't want to lose anybody on this. But gosh, I probably should put the next slide in there instead of keep going back and forth, but that's all right. So $381,262. That's just on the new and preventive office visits here. Okay, so I got 348, 32, 381, 262. So 381, 262, 381, 262. So that's the number I'm getting. The NP average salary in New Jersey is $103,000. So I employ you as a nurse practitioner. I'm going to make you work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. I'm going to put you on 20-minute time slots that you're probably getting excited about because most doctors only give you 15-minute time slots. I'm going to tell you that I want to have you see 20-some% new patients. We're going to allocate about 55% for established, and with the 25% are going to be problem focused. Here's the total number of patients you're going to see. You don't even have to do anything, Mom. Just see them. Make sure you clock this bell curve, which is your bell curve of visits, and you're going to generate $381,000 for me, and I'm going to pay you $103,000. Sounds like a winner to me all day long. Now, we are not included costs to include malpractice. You do have to have a malpractice coverage. I do have overhead cost allocation. I do have software and technology that I have to use to bill. I do have collaborating physician fees I have to pay. It's usually about 10% of the NP salary. I do have fringe and benefits that you want paid because that's important. And we have some staffing costs because you have to have a biller, you have to have a scheduler, you have to have somebody saying hello to the person when they come into your practice. So there are some costs between that 103 and 381. But you know what? For you by yourself, generating $381,000 on a $103,000 salary, I think we got enough to play with. Here's an annual mean of wage for nurse practitioners by state. This was just recently published, and I did not cite the reference, so shame on me, but it is a reference source, and maybe I can throw that in the lecture notes just to help pull that together. But it is current. Well, current, published in 2015, reflecting 2014 data. So let's talk about inpatient. So let's get our hospitalists, our NICU folks, let's pipe up here on this part. So same concepts. Let's take our one nurse practitioner. You're going to see patients 40 hours a week. You're going to be adult, family, maybe acute, maybe in ER, it's more like another option, but adult, acute, hospitalist type base. You're not going to look at time slots because you don't have appointments. So you're going to be looking at census and bed days. If you're in a nursing home, you're looking at census of the nursing home, you're looking at bed days. And I'm going to be looking at, I had 40 admissions, I do 40 admissions this month, I have an average length of stay of 3.5 days. What could that mean to me? Now, you might have, as a nurse practitioner, depending on the hospital you work in, your medical staff bylaws may restrict you from admitting a patient. So if that's the case, you don't get any admissions. But you do get all the subsequent hospital stays over the length of stay. Some hospitals say you may not discharge a patient, so that goes away, and you only get to do the subsequent visits. Either way, you have to play with the numbers a little bit, but we're going to go that we are with a very forward-thinking facility that allows you as a nurse practitioner to admit, see the patients, and discharge them, collaborate with a medical director, and function in that regard, and all the state laws allow you to do that as well. So again, no appointment types or time slots, so we have to look at what we're doing here. So 40 admissions, 3.5 days. What's this look like? Well, 40 admissions a month times 12 is 480 admissions a year. 3.5 days average length of stay, so I'm going to take my 480 times 3.5. No, because I need to subtract out my initial day and my discharge day because those are billable. Those are separate and billable. Those are billable separately. So I actually only get 1.5 times the 480 because I get an initial hospital care visit, I get a discharge, that's 1 and 2. Then I get my 3.5 from another 1.5 of subsequent hospital care. I saw the patient twice in the hospital. Now, you don't bill a 1.5, you bill 2 for the 2 days, but I'm kind of going on the averages here to get to a number. Discharges, let's assume they all go home, no one dies, and you discharge them, all of them as well as 480. So what I did is I took my 480 admissions, took my 480 discharges, took my 720 subsequent hospital visits, divided them out on an allocation. This allocation comes from the same concept that we had on the outpatient with the bell curve. Guess what? Nurse practitioners have the same bell curve inpatient. Can't guarantee this is the percentages for the nurse practitioner, but the same concept applies. Work RVUs, total RVUs, 3,140. That's not bad. Would we look at the other number, 5,000? So one person can kind of handle this, probably even do more. I've got my MD reimbursement. I got my NP reimbursement. So in this case, I've got a 43.98% using my 75th charge. And I got $148,000 on a $103,000 salary. Ooh, that's a little tight. But this is what staff overhead. You're in the hospital doing rounds. You don't have an office building. You don't have office staff. You don't have schedulers. The hospital admissions office does anything. So you really just have a billing arm and some malpractice and medical directorship. So this might be tight based on this, but maybe not at the 175. Again, what do you negotiate? What's your payer mix? Things in that regard. So it shows you that I can apply the same assumption inpatient. I can do this for an emergency room, put my 5 levels of emergency services here. How many patients do I see? Throw my allocation, throw my reimbursement, and you're going to get a sense of how much money you are generating for your practice. Now, as an assignment, I could say, hey, let's go out and come up with what are your CPT codes and what are you multiplying by? And we can take that to the next level. That's not the intent of this course. I just want to do more of an introduction to this. And then you can say, yeah, I think I have a little bit of the groundwork. May need to call Ken to get some of the allocations if I wanted to do something, because he'll provide those to me for free. And because I'm a student in this class. And let's take a look at some of that you can do on your own to look at, hey, how much am I worth? This is the same type of lecture or work process I go through when I have a nurse practitioner that's saying to me, hey, this doctor wants to cut my salary and doesn't see the value I'm bringing. So let's go back and think for a minute. I am in here taking a look at my work RVUs. You know what? Hold on. You're going to bear with me. I'm going to be in here and I'm going to take a look at my work RVUs, this slide. I guess I got to hit play. Okay. If I'm down here in my medical revenue and say for some reason I come up and you come in and tell me, hey, I'm at 3,000 work RVUs. I'm going to be like, wow, that's like really low. What are you doing? Well, I'm on the phone all the time. That doctor's in surgery and I'm doing all of this medical treatment and I'm diagnosing and I'm changing treatment plans and I'm changing medications and I'm doing medically necessary telephone calls with the patient. But, those aren't billable, so I just don't chart them, but I'm doing all that stuff. Okay, silly you. Why aren't you entering that fact that you did that telephone call and get credit for it? Why aren't you documenting and charting what you did? I don't really care if it's billable, because I'm going to be looking at where's your RVUs, how much money would you generate. Okay, telephone calls are not reimbursed from third-party carriers, but I can guarantee you when you're sitting in the office handling that surgeon's telephone call while he's in surgery, that's an opportunity cost for him, because you're taking care of something what he would have to come home and take care of after surgery to his practice and say, all right, now I got to return 900 calls. You're doing those 900 calls so he can be in surgery. So we've now given that doctor more focus to say, you do what you do right and you work to your highest scope of practice. I'll work to my highest scope of practice. And frankly, I can't operate as a nurse practitioner. I maybe assist, but I can't operate as a nurse practitioner. I sure can do all these other things for you. But you know what? When the biller and the practice manager goes, oh, well, that stuff's never paid, just don't worry about it, all of a sudden you do become an expense. You need to document patient care time you're giving, whether it's coordinating patient counseling, instruction, telephone calls, whatever you're doing. I don't care if it's billable to third parties. You document it, you record it, because I want to be benchmarking you on your RVUs. Well, then all of a sudden I can come in and start validating that and say, well, what would be my, if I took this slide, what would be this if this said telephone call? Well, it might not pay us, but it has a value. It has a dollar amount. Multiply it out and say, you know what? I understand that third-party payers don't pay for this, but that's worth $58,000 or whatever the number comes out to. Now, all of a sudden, you're really building this is what the value of me as a nurse practitioner in this practice setting is worth. That's powerful. That's stuff you really want to know. And then these are the ways you kind of come to defend it. So what we've looked at is you can come up with assumptions and look at how many time slots and what's your capacity, what's your FTE allocation. I mean, maybe you're only part-time. Great, 0.25. Multiply everything by 0.25 and we know where you should be benchmarking. Then we looked at it and said, well, just because I said so and I had this many patients I should see, does that match against what other people are saying in the markets and people are referencing as benchmarks to say, are you being productive or not productive? Now, granted, you have to create your own incentive plans, but at least gives you some credibility that, hey, I kind of have an idea what I'm talking about. I'm not just saying, because I talked to my other nurse practitioner friend, and while we were like having lunch, we all kind of thought I wasn't getting paid enough, and I just have that feeling because she's making more than me. Well, come on. If you were an employer, you'd be like, yeah, okay, thank you. Can you go back to work now? No, that's not what you're going to do. You're going to actually get real data to show where you sit. And if you're at that 75th, 95th percentile, hey, that just needs some attention brought to it. And then when you're at those volume numbers, we can easily look back. All I did was pull Medicare allowable rates. So that's making the assumption in this presentation, 100% of everything's Medicare allowable. If you have a payer mix that's all commercial and the practice generates reimbursements at 150% of Medicare, multiply and do the math. Emergency rooms, 243% of Medicare is where those sometimes pay out. If not, at 300% of Medicare. Boom, look at the numbers for seeing the exact same patient. Same 20-minute windows, 40-minute window. It's just how much you get paid to see that patient. That's why people get so anxious about reimbursements and allowable rates. Why do you think practices are dumping Medicare? $148,000 on an inpatient side. Yeah, I need to make a little bit more than that, so let's stop seeing Medicare. Obviously, inpatient's different, but you get my point. That's how some of those decisions are made in moving practices out of payers and dropping networks. So anyway, so I think we've hit our 3 objectives. This is the last module in the series, at least for this portion. So I do owe you some follow-ups on the outsourced billing and a few things that I want to get to you that if I don't get before the e-college shuts down, I'll definitely email you all. So thank you so much. I've really appreciated this. I hope this presentation pulled all the other kind of presentations together, puts a little bit of a bow and tie on it. Obviously, you got to collect the money. So when I project a number that shows $381,000, you got to have scheduling, virtual registration, time of service, charge posting, payment posting, third-party recovery, and you've got to make sure that that management team, when that roller coaster ends the ride, is not looking at, hey, I sent 20 people out, 10 came back dead, because I want $381,000, not $150,000, because you left it on the floor or the ground of the roller coaster. So kind of shows you how it all fits together. Thanks so much.